Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavnebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. It's a pleasure to welcome you again for yet another discussion on this very important topic of reading Srila Prabhupada's books every day. In the past discussions, we've seen how many devotees have highlighted the reading of Prabhupada's Bhaktivedanta purports every day has transformed their lives and transformed their lives for good. It has its significance in our personal spiritual life, but it also has a significance in transforming ISKCON, sustaining ISKCON, and growing ISKCON for the many thousand years to come. Today, it's a privilege for me to invite for discussion someone who calls himself a regular rank and file devotee. But sometimes a regular rank and file devotee could be someone who spent last 45 years in worshipping Srila Prabhupada and his books very sincerely, chanting 16 rounds every day, going to Mangalarti every day, following the principles of simple living, high thinking, farm communities, taking care of 12 cows by himself along with the help of his son. I welcome for this discussion His Grace Adikarta Prabhu from the community in Alachua. Hare Krishna, Adikarta Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this very important discussion and very enlightening discussion, which you volunteered and wrote to us about. Adikarta Prabhu, when was the first time that you came face to face in an encounter with Srila Prabhupada's books?
The first time was in 1974 when I met a devotee in London and I got a Back to Godhead magazine. And, you know, the magazine had an invitation to Bhaktivedanta Manor. So it wasn't a book, it was Back to Godhead. But still, you know, meeting somebody out there distributing Prabhupada's literature saved my life, basically. So
you are right now in the US. What were you doing in London? Are you originally from England?
Yeah, I'm from London. Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
And I was, you know, I was really looking for answers. I mean, I was really desperate to find, you know, some understanding of what life is all about. So I was so happy to get the opportunity or the invitation to go to the manor. So I went there the next day. Actually, at the same time, I got a recording by Chutananda, then Maharaj, called India. I'd already been to India twice, actually. You know, I was one of the great unwashed hippies. And so I went to India twice before I became a devotee, but I didn't find what I was looking for. You know, there weren't really any ISKCON temples when I went to India. And so, you know, I went to Varanasi and different places, Delhi, but I never met, there weren't any devotees there when I went. So, you know, I was so fortunate that I got one of Prabhupada's literatures, without which, you know, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I don't know where I'd be. Probably be in a ghost body.
Without which most of us won't be here talking to anybody, any sense at all. Do you remember anything from that first Back to God magazine that came in your hands?
No, not really. I just remember the invitation for the Sunday program. So, you know, the next day I went there to the manor and I met Mukunda Maharaj. He wasn't a Maharaj at the time. And, you know, I really liked the atmosphere. So I decided, you know, I needed to move in. So I moved in the next day, practically speaking. And then, you know, after a few days, I was out distributing books, traveling around actually with Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj. Then he was called Raghavir. So right from the beginning, I was distributing the books. And I found that, all my questions about life were answered by reading the books. And everything was just so logical and it made so much sense that I became totally convinced that there's no other reality than Krishna consciousness, and that distributing Prabhupada's books, this is such an important service to give people an opportunity to hear from Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu, were you reading any other spiritual literature before you came into the temple?
I mean, I read Siddhartha, I read different books by Hermann Hesse, I read Gurdjieff, he's a philosopher, talked about other planets, Beelzebub, and I read, I had a version of the Bhagavad Gita. I read something about Buddhism. That's about it,
And did you see a stark contrast in the way Srila Prabhupada describes spiritual life vis-a-vis others? Something that you could share with us?
Well, I found that, Prabhupada gave us a practice in the books. He gave us a whole paradigm, an alternative paradigm, an actual lifestyle. The books that I'd read before, they were, mainly novels. There wasn't really a practical application described in them. And it was hard to grasp, even having the Bhagavad Gita, it was hard to grasp what the message was, or how to practice it, or how to think, or how to relate to the world. So with Prabhupada's books, you get everything, because you get, the way to live properly, how to think properly, how to act properly. Just so much conviction is there that, explains everything. Every question you have is explained in the books.
Prabhu, you mentioned that very soon after coming in touch with devotees, along with Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, you started going out to distribute books.
Yeah.
What was the culture amongst the young and energetic book distributors with respect to reading Srila Prabhupada's books also while they were out there distributing books?
Well, we had class every morning from the books. Maybe we didn't read the books so much individually. I can't remember that well, to be honest, but I know that very soon, we were learning slokas. We were packed in a van. I remember we had a tiny little van. We were traveling in different parts of England and Ireland, and there would be 5 of us in a little van, and we'd be learning the slokas. And we know that's what Prabhupada wanted us to learn, slokas. And those slokas that we learned back in those days, 40 years ago, really, stood us in good stead, because they've been a source of inspiration, a source of comfort, a source of knowledge, everything else.
Yes.
So, I got a taste for reading the books quite quickly, though, because, I had a thirst to just understand more about Krishna consciousness. And I've always been an avid reader. I've read many other books aside from Srila Prabhupada's books. That he recommended us to read.
Right.
So, mainly I read Prabhupada's books, but so many books.
And over the years, Prabhu, now it's been 45 years.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, how old would your physical body be now?
75.
And you still go out to distribute books regularly?
I'm still going out to distribute books, and I only distribute Prabhupada's books.
Jai.
And I actually love going out and distributing books. But what I try to do is also, I try to preach to people as well. I mean, I think it's great to distribute as many books as you can, but my thing is making devotees. Because the best way to actually increase the book distribution is to get other people to distribute the books. So, I distribute the books and I speak to people and I explain, just Prabhupada's simple philosophy. Maybe I explain it in a sort of American way or, a way people can relate to in this day and age. And I try to, cultivate people. I'll spend time with people.
Yes.
If someone wants to talk to me for half an hour about the philosophy, I'm fine with that. I'm not just rushing off to sell more books. I want to give people a good chance to associate because, in Prabhupada's books, we have the verses about was Tule Mandalavena Pina Swagam Napana Bhavam Bhagavat Bhakti Sangasya. Can't remember the last line, maybe Anyway, one moment's with association with the devotee is more valuable. And I'm not much of a devotee, but seeing as I've been transformed by reading Prabhupada's books and practicing Krishna consciousness, I think that giving people a chance to associate with me because I've associated with Prabhupada, that is very valuable for people.
It is the most invaluable gift one can offer, Srila Prabhupada's association in his books. Prabhu, in your estimation and evaluation of your life in the past 45 years, how has reading Prabhupada's books contributed to your spiritual life? And how does it continue to contribute to your ongoing spiritual life?
Well, reading Srila Prabhupada's books gives you a lot of, it confirms the fact that, Krishna consciousness is the most wonderful philosophy. And, some of the pastimes, like I like the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I mean, I like all the books, I love to read Bhagavad Gita. I love to read The Opulence of the Absolute. I read that over and over again. But, certain pastimes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, for instance, I just find them so sweet and so beautiful that they really enchant your mind. And they make you realize that there's no other literature like Srila Prabhupada's books or like the Vedas, because they attract your mind to Krishna, and they make you realize that that after you've read so many mundane books, I read Tolstoy, I've read Orwell, so many books I've read, okay? And they're all pretty depressing. Dostoevsky, great writers. I don't know if you've read Dostoevsky. Pretty depressing.
I wish I had not read, but please go on.
Anyway, so there's no other books like Prabhupada's books. There's no other books like the Vedas. They have so much information about everything you need to know, and they just reel you in. They just make you more and more attracted to going to the spiritual world, to giving out the knowledge, to seeing Krishna consciousness flourish and expand, because there's nothing else out there. There's no other philosophy that compares to Krishna consciousness. There's no other knowledge that compares to it. It's the absolute truth.
Indeed. I'm reminded of this very beautiful statement from Srila Prabhupada. He said, my books, they're like sweet dolls. Taste anywhere, they're like sweet dolls, very sweet. When you were speaking about Chaitanya Chaitamrita, I was reminded of that statement.
Yeah.
Is there something, some anecdote or some pastime from Chaitanya Chaitamrita that you'd like to quickly share with us, which brings that
Well,
mood of joy,
there
sweetness
are
in your everyday life?
there are so many wonderful pastimes. One that I like particularly is when he's traveling in the jungle and the two parrots, they land
Oh,
on his wrists, and the male parrot starts glorifying Krishna, and the female parrot starts glorifying Radharani. And I think
yes.
they're actually they're repeating words from, maybe it's the Srimad Bhagavatam or the, I don't
Yes.
know, but
It is the Srimad Bhagavatam, what I recall.
yeah, and I love that. And I also really like the pastime where Lord Chaitanya meets Sanatana Goswami in Puri. And, where Sanatana Goswami gets the sores on his body.
Yes.
And, he doesn't want to be embraced by Lord Chaitanya because the sores are oozing with some kind of pus, I don't know what. And it doesn't smell good either. And he feels so bad that Lord Chaitanya keeps embracing him. And of course, he's walking on the beach getting his feet burnt because he doesn't want to walk by the pujaris of the Jagannath temple because he doesn't want to contaminate them. So here he is, he's got burnt feet, he's got these sores in his body. He doesn't know what to do because Lord Chaitanya keeps embracing him. He's thinking of committing suicide. Lord Chaitanya tells him, forget it, I know what you're thinking about. Don't even go there. And then ultimately, Jagadananda, he tries to, he tell him to go to Vrindavan or something. And he says, Lord Chaitanya says, no, why are you listening to him? He's just a new boy,
Yes.
which is hard to understand because he's an incarnation of Satyabhama. And
Yes.
sometimes Satyabhama seems to get humbled by Krishna.
Yes. Yes.
Anyway, so Lord Chaitanya embraces Haridas. He embraces Sanatana Goswami. Well, he also tells him, I have many things that I want you to do, many books you have to write and temples you have to establish. But then he embraces him and his sores go away. But he says, I think of you and Haridas as my little children. So just like a mother, the stool of the baby is like sandalwood. So your sores to me smell so beautiful. They're this wonderful smell of, I think it's called chatushama or something. You know what it is? It's a mixture of sandalwood paste and
camphor, aguru, camphor, sandalwood, and yes, like that.
Anyway, so, Lord Chaitanya is so sweet the way he encourages them, and he doesn't take any offense about the nasty smell or anything. He just loves them so much. So I love that pastime. There's so many wonderful pastimes. The way he eats a whole room full of food, prasadam, which is offered by his devotees.
Yes.
Everything about it is wonderful. And another amazing thing I find about Prabhupada's books is that he took so much care and time to present the Siddhanta in a very thorough way. Because there's other so-called acharyas, they may be acharyas, like contemporary ones of Prabhupada, who, supposedly gave the highest understanding, right? But Prabhupada didn't jump to that. If you read the Adi Leela, for instance, all the Siddhanta, all the technical explanation of Nityananda and the Chatavyuha, and 3, 4, 5-page purports, which are difficult to read in a way because they're so philosophical. But Prabhupada didn't want to establish a society or a philosophy which wasn't on very solid foundation. So the reason he did that, he wanted, the Hare Krishna movement to have an explanation for everything and to make sure there were no misunderstandings when he presented the philosophy.
Yes.
So even though it's hard to read, like some chapters in the Bhagavatam, it's just all names. There's several chapters, the descendants of this king or whatever. And it just
the whole
enumerates
the ninth canto, towards the end, the ninth canto is just one lineage after the other.
Yeah. But it's all important because it's a history of the world. It's all factual truths about the history of this world, and we should know it.
And it's not available anywhere else in the world, by the way, that history.
Not at all. Absolutely
Ninth
not.
canto and 12th canto, they describe the whole history, and with exact years, counting up to recent times.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's amazing. So we have the whole history of the world. And one thing that Prabhupada's books also, they give you a lot of conviction, about science,
Yes.
about Darwin. I mean, of course, Prabhupada had many different types of books. But for instance, the Life Comes from Life. It's a book of conversations with Srila Damodar Maharaj and others. So that's an amazing book because Prabhupada has so much conviction. He's such a warrior because he's really going against the whole modern mindset that we evolved. And here he is, he's calling out the modern scientists. They're a bunch of cheats, a bunch of liars. they're the big demons. I mean, who would dare to say that, the more you kick Darwin in the face, the more advanced you are? So Prabhupada, he was so fearless and so honest. And it's a fact, that we have this knowledge, which is so valuable because the whole world is being fed false information about life, about the reality, about the beginning of life. And here we have all that knowledge.
Mm. I want to ask you two questions on history. One is, when Srila Prabhupada was present with all of you, did you have an opportunity to hear from him directly on him telling everybody to read his books or the importance of his books or anything that you recall?
Well, it was just generally understood that, we didn't read any other books.
Right.
I mean, basically, our whole lifestyle was based around what Prabhupada said. It was never watered down. People at that time, everyone wore a dhoti, everyone shaved their head, everyone had a sikha. I mean, when Prabhupada was sick, okay, go out, distribute more books, it'll get better if you distribute more books. It was all about Prabhupada. It was all, so remembering specific instructions about reading his books, I mean, you didn't need specific instructions. Those were the only books we had. We had, compilation of Prabhupada's books about preaching called Preaching is the Essence.
Yes.
We had, the teachings of Queen Kunti, which was based on lectures that Prabhupada gave. We had the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev. We would distribute those books and we would read those books. And if we had a difficult day on Sankirtan, we'd sit down in the middle of the street and we'd start reading the teachings of Queen Kunti or the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev or something, So it was all about Prabhupada's books and Prabhupada's teachings. There wasn't anything else at that time. There weren't any other gurus. It was very simple, but it was very nice. I mean, everyone was a fanatical Prabhupada follower.
Prabhu, fast forward 45 years, what do you see now in terms of of the culture within ISKCON now, and if you were to contrast it retrospectively to what it was then, what would your observations be and what would your advice be on this topic?
Well, I mean, basically, the best, I mean, you know, I live in Alachua, and Alachua's, you know, it's a great community, but it's not a sort of intentional community. It's a more of a spontaneous type of community. So I like to go to Hungary. Hungary is my favorite, New Brajadam, Shiva Ramaraj.
Yes.
Because I think, they don't have a lot of outside influences there, and they're able to follow really strictly, Prabhupada's program. And the thing I like also is that, they're not just reading the books, they're also following the instructions of the books, which was something I wanted to also talk about, because, we can't only just read the books, but the books have to influence our life, and they have to be the basis of our lifestyle. So
please say that again. I want to hear that part a few times from you. That part about it being the basis of our life.
Yes, reading the books is one thing. We can read the books, but, we also have to make the books our lifestyle. Like, Prabhupada talks about, for instance, in the 8th canto, okay, there's a whole pastime there with Bali Maharaj and Vamanadev. And Vamanadev was asking, just for 3 steps of land. But with the first 2 steps of land, he covers the whole universe. And then, Bali Maharaj says, well, is this all you want? Is he, so anyway, Vamanadev, he says, one should be satisfied with very little. So Prabhupada says, yes, we're trying to teach this, that people should be satisfied with very little. So in that light, we're establishing so many farm communities, especially in America. Well, unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of farm communities in America, and none that are that successful. I'm just being honest here. But I think it's a big problem because, for the books talk a lot about cow protection. Prabhupada says, Brahminical culture means cow protection. It means, you can't be healthy without cow's produce, according to Prabhupada. So it's such an important part of our philosophy. But we don't really, the only place that I really see it, enacted in a very practical and a way that has a lot of potential is actually in Hungary. So I like to go there a lot because I get inspiration, because I see that the program there, and I have to give the credit to Shiva Ramaraj, the program there is that, they're living the philosophy that Prabhupada talks about in the books. And so, we have the greatest philosophy, but if we don't live it, then it's just like an armchair philosophy. It's not meant to be an armchair philosophy. It's meant to be a practical way to live. We're supposed to change the world. And to change the world, we have to show people an alternative way to live. And if we don't do that, the books are great. They're the basis. But without showing people how to live the lifestyle of the books, of course, we can have preaching centers in the city and restaurants and everything else, great. But at the same time, we have to show people this alternative lifestyle. So I have 12 cows here because basically, I'm trying to follow Prabhupada's directions from the books. And I want to be healthy, and I don't want to support, non-ahimsa dairies. and I have a family. You know, I want to see my kids and my grandchildren drinking ahimsa milk. And we supply a lot of residents in this area with ahimsa milk. So I'm trying, but it's not the same as being part of a big community.
Prabhu,
Okay.
I want to ask you one more question. You very emphatically highlighted that's one thing to read, and it's another, and it's probably more important is to adopt it, absorb what we're reading and adopt it in our personal lives. Otherwise, we will be, what you said, armchair philosophers.
Right.
Now, adopting it in our lives requires conviction. In our conversation earlier on, you talked about that you get the conviction from reading Prabhupada's books because Prabhupada has the conviction. So it's almost like he's passing that conviction through his Vani, through his words, and of course through his personal life, because you witnessed it, and many of us can also witness it through his recordings and how he lived it. Why do some devotees, I'll talk about 3 stages, okay, Prabhu? You've talked about the stage where you adopt it in your life and you can show by personal example. But prior to that, there's the first stage, whereas establishing a relationship with Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya, as the preeminent Siksha Guru, opening up our brain, our eyes, our ears to be willing to hear his words. The second is we read, and we read with a proper attitude. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions along this journey of a sadhaka. So the first question is, what must a devotee do to first establish that relationship of faith and conviction on the words of Srila Prabhupada and him as a founder Acharya, preeminent Siksha Guru? What are the few practical things an incoming person should do, could do, must do to come to the point where he feels inspired to hear every day from Srila Prabhupada? Anything that you want to share on that?
Well, I mean, Prabhupada is such a special person because basically, you know, he's given so much more than so many famous philosophers and religious people. If you compare what he's given, you know, I mean, Socrates and Plato and Homer, you know, they're all famous philosophers.
Yes.
And they're all studied in all the big universities. You know, they have philosophy classes. They study all these people. But, you know, what did Socrates teach, really? Basically, he didn't know. He knew very little, right? So then we have Jesus. Now, Jesus, you know, we love Jesus. Prabhupada said we should love Jesus. We should worship Jesus. He's like our guru. But compared to what, and he's probably the most famous individual man in the world, except for Donald Trump. So Jesus is such a famous, influential personality. Compare what he gave to what Prabhupada gave. You know, would they say Jesus, he sacrificed his life? You know, he died for our sins, whatever. But Prabhupada sacrificed his life as well. Because Prabhupada, he gave everything for Lord Chaitanya's mission, for his guru. So Prabhupada sacrificed everything, but he gave so much more information and practical instructions on how to live in this world. So therefore, he's the most important teacher. Of course, you know, we have the 6 Goswamis, Jiva Goswami, you know, I was hearing about him from Radhika Raman the other day, very nice class he gave about Jiva Goswami, amazing. But Prabhupada is the public face of Krishna consciousness, because he is the one who spread it all over the world. And his books are, you know, they're more relevant because most people can't read Jiva Goswami anyway. Even the 6 Goswamis' works are a little difficult to understand. So Prabhupada simplified the message and he made it understandable for modern man. So therefore, his books are the most important books because he proved by his lifestyle, his example, how to do everything properly, how to live for Krishna, how to give everything up for Krishna, how to die for Krishna, how to eat for Krishna, everything. So
those are big words. Those are big words. How to give up everything for Krishna, how to live for Krishna, how to die for Krishna. From a point where you've taken us so far, which is we understand the significance of Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent Siksha Guru, as somebody who has now made the philosophy accessible to people like me with lower intelligence, to be able to access the works of the Goswamis. And after all, he was appointed, he was nominated, selected by them to present the message. Prabhu, what obstacles have you seen that arise in the life of devotees to make that change from reading to actually practicing, to give up everything for Krishna, to give up everything for Prabhupada? Are you seeing that happen as much now within the current ISKCON? And what must devotees who come into this movement as congregation members, householders, what must they do to come to that point of surrender?
Well, here where I live, we're lucky because we have, we have quite a successful preaching program at the university. And so, I see young people who take it up seriously. And, I'm a part of that program. I'm trying to bring people to the Krishna House in Gainesville. I'm trying to get them to move in. And I've made several devotees, and they take it seriously. They have several study groups every day. They read the Bhagavatam every day. They have Bhagavad Gita class every day. They're taking it very seriously. So I think it also depends on how serious they are as individuals and who their guru is. I mean, I would imagine that all the gurus in ISKCON, they propagate the understanding that reading Prabhupada's books is such an important part of their life, or should be. I hope, and I'm sure that is something that they teach. So, it depends on the individual's attitude. If somebody joins ISKCON and wants to be part of the Hare Krishna movement, but they're not serious and they're not really interested in understanding what Prabhupada's message is, or knowing about, the spiritual world, or, they're very unfortunate. So we have to somehow or other, get that message across to everybody that associating with the pure devotee is not just something that you do in a physical way. You can associate with Prabhupada by reading his books, and by reading his books, you're associating with a pure devotee who can give you so much benefit. And you're really depriving yourself if you miss that opportunity. So, we've seen so many in the history of ISKCON. Of course, nowadays it doesn't happen very often. But, back after Prabhupada left the planet, we saw many gurus had difficulties. And their disciples, they were not bewildered because they understood, at least a few of them weren't anyway, because they understood that Prabhupada is he's the Adi Guru, he's the founder of Acharya. His teachings are the most important. I'm not a Ritvik person, nothing like that. But, we have to see that Prabhupada is the most important guru in ISKCON, and he will be for 10,000 years. And of course, we can also read the Brihat Bhagavatamrita and, so many books we can read, unlimited books. But we have to have the basis to understand, how to see these other books. We can't jump to reading Ujjvala Nilamani without reading Prabhupada's books because we'll misunderstand it. So Prabhupada took us in a very practical way. Like if you read Prabhupada's books, you will learn slokas just by reading the books. You won't even have to separately learn the slokas because many of them he just repeats over and over and over again.
Yes.
And you know, so Prabhupada's repetitiveness is there for a reason because he's trying to drill it into us that you're not the body, that you shouldn't feel happiness and distress, but he gives so much more. If you're patient and read all the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, and then you got the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's just full of nectar or pastimes of Radha and Krishna. It's all there. You don't need to go anywhere else. But Prabhupada also said we could read the books of the Goswamis.
So Prabhu, we are really grateful for your time today. I've learned a lot. What parting message would you like to give? If you had a 2-minute message or a 1-minute message to give to all the regular devotees in ISKCON and also to the leadership of ISKCON with respect to reading of Prabhupada's books and the realizations therein, what would be the inspiration that you like to share with everyone?
I would like to say that, if you don't read Prabhupada's books, you're committing spiritual suicide. I think you have an opportunity, you have the greatest opportunity after millions of lifetimes to actually perfect your life. And Srila Prabhupada is the most qualified person to help you do that. And if you don't do that, if you don't take advantage of that, then you're a fool and you're very unfortunate and you won't have a successful life. Sorry. I'm very straightforward.
Adikarta Prabhu, thank you so much for reminding us of how we can all save ourselves from becoming a fool greater than what we have been in the past. We will try to resonate your straightforward message in our hearts and minds and in consciousness for a long time, I hope, and keep it very close to our heart. It's very important what you said. And Srila Prabhupada's books are the nectar which are going to sustain us and sustain ISKCON. We're grateful again for your time.
Thank you.
And this was a message from a regular devotee, a devotee who's in good standing for so many years, Prabhupada disciples but still likes to consider himself a regular devotee, speaking from his heart, Adikarta Prabhu. Thank you again, and I hope to have another opportunity in the future to be able to hear from you and speak to you again about this beautiful topic. All glories to Srila Prabhupada's transcendental books. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.